Yeah, I'm going to do 10 minutes or so about very much about district heating, about reaching this 17%, which the Committee on Climate Change has projected as an achievable penetration of district heating across the UK to achieve decarbonisation by 2050. And I'm probably going to just set up the scene for the rest of the session to challenge you a little bit at the end. That was my brief, and I'm going to stick with that. So I may ask more questions than provide answers, and that is deliberate. So quick question, a quick slide just about Ramboll. I'm going to skip through these. We are a Danish engineering company. We do all things engineering, but one thing that we have been privileged to be able to do is work hand in glove with Denmark and with various municipalities, particularly obviously Copenhagen, in helping develop the district heating system that they have over there that we are obviously so jealous of. So it's been going over there for many years. So I'm going to try and bring a little bit of that slant to the UK situation, and then a few projects that hopefully will give you some encouragement and then some challenges. And as I said, we do lots of different types of related subjects around energy, but I'm specifically focusing on district energy and particularly district heating. And last slide on the company, because we've been doing this for many decades, yes, we can do the planning that's quite common over here now, energy planning and design work and commissioning, but we also have a particular strength on O&M, and I would always encourage you to think about the operation of schemes right at the very beginning of that. So that's the sort of holistic service that we provide. Now, this is my only slide from our corporate PowerPoint pack on what all things district heating in Denmark. You'll be pleased to hear we have a lot. But the reason I put this one up is I think it tells pretty much the whole story of what's been happening and what is projected to happen in Denmark relating to decarbonisation and district heating. So on the left, you have the timeline starting around 1980, moving forward to 2050. And the black line is the one I'd like you to look at first. And that's the amount of carbon per unit of heat used by an end user customer. And starting off in the past and going into the future. And you can see in the past it was high, and you can see in the future it's nearly at zero over in that bottom right corner. They too have the same challenge that we have about squeezing out that last bit of carbon. But you can see how the line has plummeted and how it continues to drop. And then the colourful bars show you how the heat is being delivered. And the important colours there really are obviously the blue, and that's the large-scale district heating, and a little bit of pink appearing as you go into the future, which is what they call small-scale district heating, which is probably akin to a lot of the projects the ad hoc projects that we're delivering here. So I think there's a pretty clear pattern there showing achieving and projecting decarbonisation and district heating very much playing its part in that. And the last thing just to draw your attention to, though, is the light blue that appears around about now going forward are individual heat pumps. And if any of you are aware of our government's heat strategy, where they have a kind of simplistic diagram of high heat density going forward being met by district heating and low heat density areas being met from heat pumps, there you can see the same picture emerging in Denmark as well. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, these guys have been doing this for 40 plus years. So they started in a different place to us. They have a lot of infrastructure buried in the ground, but we shouldn't despair because they're projecting going in the same direction as us. And in fact, we're looking at some very similar technological solutions now. So my next couple of slides are around particular projects. And one of them is in Copenhagen. As I said, we're headquartered in Copenhagen. In fact, this is the answer to the question, is can we achieve 17%? The eagle-eyed of you in the audience will see 97% there, which I've highlighted in our corporate light blue, so you can't really see that. And that is the degree of district heating penetration in the city of Copenhagen. So yes, you can achieve at least 17% and more so. You just have to commit to it, and it does take a bit of time, but it is completely doable. This is the only slide I have up of projects in Copenhagen that we've been doing recently. There are obviously many, but I like this one in particular because I think this tells a story that we in the UK can wrap our heads around. So there is a temptation to say, look at the Nordics, everything's fantastic. Everybody sits around drinking flat whites and wearing funky clothing and having a lovely time, and the world's wonderful. Just do that. Just build that. And if you talk to Danes and Swedes, etc., they say, well, just do this. But that's a really hard task. And how do we start, and where do we take it from? Now, this is a project. It's just about 15 kilometres outside the city of Copenhagen. They've recently built a new fruit and flowers market, so I suppose a bit like Covent Garden, new Covent Garden here, and that market requires chilling. So they've put in chillers. They've got about 2 megawatts of cooling there, so again, numbers that we can understand. These aren't massive pieces of infrastructure, and that does its thing, and it's very clever, and it's got tiers of, as it warms up, it supplies warmer areas of the markets. It's all very well designed. But the clever bit, as far as I'm concerned, is what they do with the rejected heat off the back of the chillers. So the left-hand side represents the cooling side of the system, and then they've bolted on heat collection and heat pumps onto the hot side, and then they lift that from around 16 degrees up to the transmission system temperature, and off it goes into those red lines on the map there of the transmission network in Copenhagen. And it's just over 3 megawatts of heating. So again, nothing massive. It's a sort of scheme that we have done and we can deliver here in the UK. The waste heat temperatures are the sort of temperatures that we're looking at across the piece, and I'll come to that in a second. And this is a scheme, it's the way things are going in Denmark. They're looking at lower temperature heat sources. It's certainly something that we're looking at in the UK. And certainly in central London, where someone told me just earlier today that the days of combustion are probably over in central London as far as heating systems are concerned. So this is definitely the future here, and it's the recent present in Denmark. I suppose what is revolutionary, though, is why they located the markets where they located it. They put it on the heat pipe so they could use that heat. So that joined up thinking happened right at the start, rather than having a facility and then you're trying to pipe heat to where it's needed. They have a network, so they have that advantage over us, but they decided to put this new piece of infrastructure there, so then it is relatively easy. So is that deliverable, and is that relevant to the UK? Well, this is a fantastic study that I would, if those of you don't know about it, I would recommend that you have a look at. It was done by Borough Happold. I have no say in this at all, for the GLA a few years ago now, but it mapped all the secondary low temperature waste heat, available heat across the City of London. This is a rather badly reproduced summary here of the sorts of places that you can get heat in London, and this is true for any city, a large town, even small towns have these waste heat sources, and you'll see chillers on there like at Copenhagen. You'll see the sort of temperatures, size of heat pumps that project represents. So this is very much available now, and people are starting to exploit it. And this is a project very close to my own heart. Those of you who know me know that I've been at Ramboll for about a year. Before that, I was at Islington Council. I am really proud to see they've got a stand here. I think they might be the only local authority here today, so go and look at the On Energy stand after this, see my old team. And at Islington, they've been looking at waste heat quite seriously, as well as district heating, for some years now. And the phase 2 of Bunhill, they've got a lot of information there, is coming to the end of construction, and that will take heat from the London Underground, from the Northern Line, which those of you who have ever been on it know it's quite warm, and it gets very warm in the summer. Very complicated project, very ambitious project, but it's happening, it's being built. Ramboll have been doing the engineering for that. They also have looked at UK Power Networks transformers. There were some technical reasons why that couldn't go ahead, but the heat provision was all there. It could have happened. They've been looking at the canal, data centres, boreholes, etc. So go quiz them about how you do that now in London. And here's another schematic, and for the real nerds amongst you, the black and white picture is the old City Road London Underground station that used to sit there and was decommissioned in the 1920s. It didn't last very long, and that's what sits below the new energy centre that they're building. And the heat just wafts up from a fan, and they're capturing that and using it and putting it in a pipe that's going off to a number of council and private sites and buildings some perfectly traditional 1960s, 1970s UK housing stock, so having to meet all those demands. And hopefully in the summer the system will reverse and cooler air will be put into the London Underground. So obviously Transport for London very excited about that. So that project's happening just a few miles away from here. And then another project happening a little bit further north is in Glasgow, in Queen's Quay, where we're helping them look at waste heat recovery, but using the River Clyde this time, which I think is a little bit colder than the Northern Line. I've never been in the River Clyde, I take their word for it. But again, as in the Nordics, using large heat pumps to take heat out of a water source. And that project, it's a bit earlier stage, but that project is underway. So that's all the good news, that we're doing it and it's doable, and then a few challenges. So I'll come on to a few challenges. The first slide I thought I'd put up sums up a lot of what our challenges are, I think, which is the degree of individual gas boilers that we have here. People very, very happy with them as a heat source, and therefore, why move off them? Huge invested in infrastructure in the gas network and all those boilers. And you can see, compared to a lot of our other European neighbours, the UK is way ahead. So we have quite a challenge in changing and transforming this infrastructure. And so I've summed up here four challenges. Actually, I think since I've written this, I've changed my mind a bit and I disagreed with myself. They're challenges, but they're also possible solutions. But in order of magnitude, I think this is for you to agree or disagree with and to continue through the session. But policy, I think, sits at the top. Why has Copenhagen got to where they're going? They made some decisions about how they were going to provide heat to the country, just like we have here. But they made a decision to go for district heating, and they are where they are now. We have got some clear drivers in some parts of the country. The London Plan, for instance, has got a lot about district heating and has done for some years, and it's no coincidence that the largest number of district heating installations are here in the capital. But it's not an integral part of urban planning, and it's not on an equal footing with other infrastructure. And I think until that happens, it's not going to be. And just to show, I think, the impact of that, just to duck out from that slide for a moment, those of you who, like me, have been around in the energy industry for a while will remember the transition from non-condensing to condensing gas boilers. And for years, everybody was trying to persuade people to get really excited about condensing boilers. And it was clear as anything that they would deliver savings, they'd be cheaper for the householders, they'd save carbon, they were fantastic. But I think there's an inescapable truth that most people, us here accepted, are not at all interested in this. Most normal people, and I may be offending you all now, aren't the slightest bit interested really in their boilers or where heat comes from. They just want reliable heat and they want it to be as cheap as possible, please. So after all those months and years of various marketing campaigns and the Energy Saving Trust, etc., trying to get people to switch to condensing boilers, the building regulations finally changed, and lo and behold, boom, that was it. You had market transformation overnight, and you can see the contrast over time in Europe, where these policy changes happened, and perhaps outside the EU markets. There's a great busy slide, quite shocking lack of uptake. But it's flipped the switch overnight here, and so I suppose I am a strong advocate that sometimes there isn't a market pull for some of what we're trying to do, so some of it has to be pushed. And then just to go through it, in my view of possibly lower orders of magnitude, this issue of user demand is a really big issue, I think, for us. We are currently approaching the rollout of district heating as a market development. There is government money on the table to help kickstart and grow that market, but the theory is a market will come along and this will happen. But most markets happen because people want the product. We've all got smartphones because we really want them. You just have to have literally a new colour of smartphone and people will queue up overnight. They want that smartphone. no one, my challenge is I don't think anyone will ever do that with heating, and I think if we pretend that they will, we're going to have a broken approach. So this has to happen for other reasons. If there's no pull in a market, there won't be any push of supply. Money is vitally important, of course it is, and we're competing with other utility infrastructure that's long paid for, generally by the public purse, and we don't have that infrastructure. So money is vitally important, and government has put some great mechanisms in place. HNDU has been running for many years, has significantly changed the conversation about district heating and the data available. HNIP's here, which is fantastic. Go talk to them if you haven't gone to talk to them. But it is time limited, and if you're going to deliver a multi-million-pound project, you need to get your skates on. So this sort of slightly stop-start approach perhaps isn't helpful. Maybe there needs to be another way of financing district heating rather than dumping in money at the particular points in the system. And then I put at the bottom, and I'm an engineer, so it pains me, but I put technology at the bottom because actually generally I don't think technology is a problem. I think we have the solutions, we know what the solutions are, they're tried and tested, we can build them. It's in flux at the minute because we've relied on gas CHP, and that is changing, so that adds to risk, but I don't think that's the big deal. Now, I know I'm short for time, so I'm just going to wrap up on one last slide. So they are potentially solutions, I think, that I just put up. I think really the challenge I have is I don't think we're going about the development of district heating projects in the UK in quite the right way. I think we're scoping them, we're putting a boundary around the whole project, pipes in the ground, energy, heat sources, the consumers and offtake. Tend to have to look at the whole project and make particularly the economics work right across all those areas. And they are, you'll all come up with lots of examples probably and say, no, I know of lots of projects where you're not, but generally that is the way of it. And they all have their own challenges, they all have their own risk profiles, they need different levels of policy intervention, financial intervention, etc. So I think seeing it in the round means we are nowhere near approaching the right sort of clarity to make these projects work. And just to skip through, pipes, well, we're comparing, we've already got gas in the ground, and people are perfectly happy with their boilers. Why would we pay for this? Heat sources, there's no incentive to build, there's no incentive for existing heat sources to sell their heat into networks. And again, project-specific investment, I think, is illogical. And then back to what I said earlier, end users, are there incentives to connect? I'd argue that there are no solutions on the table on that you have to do some sort of commercial deal to undercut those existing, well tried and tested and invested in heat sources. And that's me. Thank you.